Welcome, I'm Debbie from So Easy, and today I'm going to practice a few bag making skills. So I've put together a few mock-up pieces and I'm going to try out a few new things. So let's see the pieces we've got. These are going to be the outer pieces for my bag. They're a bit plain, but we're just practicing today. Then I have these pieces, two here. These are going to be the top recessed lining on the bag, and we'll come back to look at those in a little while. I've made up just a couple of easy straps, and then I've got these pieces, and we're going to sew a recessed zipper in the top of this simple tote bag. It'll be my first time, so hopefully it'll do well, but I've done my research, run a few mock-ups, so I think I'm going to be able to do a good job. So I've got my zipper, and I've used one which is 2 inches longer than I want the recessed opening to be. I've just trimmed the end off very short there. Got a little piece of fabric and I've folded in all the raw edges, and I'm just going to match that over the zip like that and stitch around those ends just to make a nice neat zipper tab on the end of my zipper. So I'll do that first of all, and then we'll have a look at starting on the recessed zipper itself. So my zipper tab is done, and I've cut 4 pieces of fabric. So I've worked out how wide the eventual opening of the bag will be by measuring the size of the bag and then taking off the amount that we're going to box the corners. So after the seams are sewn, I'm going to cut out a 2-inch box, and I'm going to end up with a 12-inch wide bag. So I've cut my pieces 12 inches wide. I've made 4 of them, and then I've just turned under the ends on each side, and we'll see eventually whether that turns out right or wrong. So I just need 2. If I do this one and one of these. So I've made them all the same fabric, but you could use different fabrics for the top and the lining. So what I've done is this is the outer of my bag. I've made the recessed lining up at the top the same, and I've also made the recessed zipper part the same, but you can use different fabrics if you want to. So how we're going to start off, if you look at the top of the zipper, obviously the zipper stops only go so far, and then I'm just going to turn over the end of the zipper tape like that we don't need, and just hold it back out of the way. And now I need to layer up my pieces, so this will be the top. I'm going to line that up right close to that corner. I'll just pop a pin to hold it in place. Now this other one, which is going to be the back, I'm going to line that up exactly the same, square up those corners, but then the back piece I'm going to bring all the way round to the front like that, and when I sew it, it's going to give me a much nicer edge. So it's going to be tricky. Let's see if I can just pop a pin through all those layers. Okay, and now I'll just run the zip down through here, keeping the 3 edges even. And when I get down to the end, I'll make sure when I pin that I fold those edges in and line that up there, and I'll sew all the way from one side to the other. So I've sewn all the way with my zipper foot from one way to the other. Obviously at the end here I've got a bit of zip which isn't covered, so let's turn that out and see what it looks like. Okay, so if I fold over now up at this top part, just give it a little press with my finger, you can see how it's created a nice neat corner here, and the edge of the zipper tape is hidden in the back and covered up by the fabric. So now I just need to straighten this out, match up those ends and give it a good press, and then I'm going to do exactly the same on this other side. So same as we did before, I'll fold over the end of the zipper tape, keep that out the way, put this side of the corner of the fabric, oh no, hold on, what am I thinking, that way. And then when I put this one over the top, I'm just going to pull it round and sew with my zipper foot down here, and that will create that nice neat corner. So I'll complete now on my other side, and then I'll give both sides a good press. So my fabric is now in on both sides of the zipper, and I can open it all the way to the end of the fabric and beyond, and that helps us to open the bag wider later on. Luckily everything lined up neatly, so these ends are level and these ends are level too, so that's what you're aiming for. So I've given it a good press, and now it's time to top stitch. So I'm going to start at the corner here, go along to this point, top stitch along the edge of the zip and off to this corner, and then exactly the same on this side. So I'm going to do from one corner to the other, but I'm not going to stitch across here because I want this part of the zip to remain open. So I'll top stitch and give it another press, and then we'll be ready to add it into our bag lining. So the zipper is now completed, and we're all ready to go to add this into the bag. So these are my lining pieces. I've got this, which will be the inside of the lining, that's going to fall underneath the zip, and then this piece will be the top. So you'll still see this at the top of the bag, and then the zip will come in here. So I need to find the centre of my zip, and I'm going to ignore the part that's hanging off over the edge, fold these edges together and just find the centre, pop a pin, and I'll do that on the other edge too, because I need to centre it with this lining. So if I fold the lining in half, find out where the centre is, and I'm going to match the zipper part to the lining part. So I'll match those two centres together, just here. And then this part needs to face this part because it's obviously right sides facing, and then this is the wrong side of the zip which faces the right side of the lining. So if I line those two there, I need to find the centre of this one. That's going to be fairly straightforward because that lines up with the top of my lining fabric there. And now I'll pin these all the way along. Take out the pins from here and just move them to the top. And now I want to sew all the way, so from one side of the lining to the other, and what's going to happen is we'll end up with this flap in the centre here. So not just the part with the actual flap itself, but sew all the way, the lining one side to the other. Make sure obviously that you don't catch this end of the zip in the lining. So that's my first side completed, and it's now time to do exactly the same on the other side. So if I turn over, I'll lie down my lining fabric first, and I want the right side of the lining fabric to touch the wrong side here, so I'll just find the centre, line that up with the pin that I left in there from earlier, pop a pin, and now I'll take my other strip for the top of the bag and lie that facing the right side of the zip. Line everything up so it's all square, and then again I'll pin through all those layers, matching up the raw edges, and I'm going to stitch from one side to the other, and then our bag lining with the recessed zipper will be completed. That really wasn't too difficult. Okay, time to do that last line of sewing. So that's now finished with the zipper in the top. Now it looks kind of a little bit strange because obviously it's a funny shape, but this will be the opening for the bag. This part here is going to join along the top seams, and then these parts here, these form the boxed corners of the bag. So as we box the corners, these parts here will be sewn. There'll still be a gap at either end. I think probably I made it a little bit short, I don't know, we'll see when the bag's finished. So that's the part of the tutorial for the recessed zipper. If you want to go on and watch me finish the bag, you can do. It's just going to be something simple which I'll probably use to carry my groceries home from the shops, and we'll carry on now next with the straps. So this is the outside panel for the bag, and these are the simple straps that I've made for it. And I'm going to measure in 4 inches from each side and put this strap just there. A pin just will hold it in place. Same on the other side. I'll measure 4 inches in and put my strap. Now I've made sure that I've cut my straps and trimmed them till they're both exactly the right length. They're both the same as each other because we don't want to end up with one strap longer than the other, the one handle, because then you won't be able to hold your bag evenly. So provided I now do exactly the same on the other side, I measure in 4 inches, I line up the strap here with the edge of the fabric, then both of the handles are going to be level. So I'll now do that as well on the other side of my bag. So now the straps are pinned in place, I just need to match it with the top here. So where I've got the recessed zipper, I've got these matching flaps up at the top, and they're the same width as the bag. So I'm just going to match those two together. So now the lining and the outer of the bag are matching up at the top seam. And I'll pin those all the way across. And I'll sew that first one. And once I've done this one, then we'll do the other side. So this is the first side completed, and now it's starting to take shape a little bit more. You can see how it's going to work once it's completed. So we just have to sew on this other side. So again, I'm going to match them right sides together. Now, did you spot the mistake with my straps before? Because I've got straps that look better on one side than the other, I should have put them right sides facing. Luckily, I caught that in time. So if you have straps that have got a wrong side and a right side, remember to put them right sides facing. So this is my other outer. I line up this piece now. And I'm just going to pin all the way across the top and then sew. And then that will be everything joined together. I'm sure you don't want to watch me pinning and sewing, so I will go on and do this, and then we'll move on to completing the bag. So far it's all looking a little bit kind of funky, but now what we need to do is match our right sides together for the outer and the lining. So if I flip the outside up, start with my lining pieces, I'm just going to pin these. And make sure that this zipper part here stays well out of the way when you're matching up your lining pieces. And same as you would with any bag, you're going to match up all these seams on the side. So you'll match this one in the lining, and you'll match this one up at the top. This forms the top of the bag just here. And then you'll continue pinning, match the side seams on the lining and the bag and the bottom seams, and sew all the way round. You'll need to leave a space in the lining, so I suggest in the bottom down here just leave a space like this in the lining to open it and turn the bag later on. Otherwise you can sew all the way now around the outside. Well, that turned out to be unexpectedly challenging. I don't know if you've noticed, but I was using a different type of fabric here on the inside of the bag. Instead of using an interfacing or a fleece, I was using a headliner fabric. It's like a kind of thin foam, and I've been reading recently that it's really good for bags. So seeing this was an experimental bag, I thought I would give it a try. But when I was trying to sew these side seams, oh my goodness, that was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, and it's all kind of puckered and messed and all over the place. I just could not get this foam to feed through my sewing machine. So if anyone has any tips and tricks for how to sew with this headliner fabric, I'd be really interested. So I'm glad that it wasn't a project which I spent a lot of time and money on, and it's just a simple tote bag, because I think it's not going to be so great when we turn it inside out. But anyway, moving on from there, now it's time I'm just going to box these corners. So that will be another foamy sewing disaster, but we'll see how I get on. So I'm just going to match up, as usual, the side seam with the bottom seam. And if I pin those in place. And now I've got them pinned. Just going to draw myself a 3-inch line across this bottom, right there, So normally I would take a bit more time, fuss a bit, but seeing I think this is going to be a big mess anyway, just going to see how it turns out. And I'll do exactly the same on the other corners, so the same on the lining, same on the other one, match up the side and bottom seams, draw a 3-inch line, and then I'll sew across my line. So my tote bag is now nearly finished. I closed up the gap in the bottom of the lining, obviously turned everything inside out, and I've just given it a quick press. The side seams, actually, I was really worried they were going to turn out a right nasty mess after the trouble I had with the headliner, but actually they're not too bad at all once I've given it a press. And actually I'm quite impressed with the fabric because the bag stands up easily on its own just with that layer of foam. So if I can find out a better way to feed it through the machine, I might be converted too. But here we are with our recessed zipper in the top of the bag. And close that up, you can see it in action. There we go, so that's pushed down there at the top, and actually I think the length that I selected for it was pretty good. So I can undo that, and I'm just going to take it back to the machine, and my final step will just be to top stitch around the bag. It's got the foam up here, but I've left it away from the seam allowances, so I think it will be easy enough to do. Maybe a little tight on these corners, and then my recessed bag zipper will be complete. So who would have thought? I started off with the tutorial trying to learn how to do a recessed bag zipper up at the top like that, and actually that turned out really well. And what didn't turn out so well was this headliner fabric. So that's what I love so much about sewing. You really never know what you're going to encounter. So thank you very much for joining me on this tutorial, and if I ever work out about this headliner, I'll certainly come back and let you know. Thanks for watching.